Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Doom Patrol Season 4, Episode 9. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So I really love that, obviously the episode threw me for a loop when we just had the opening, and I was like, whoa, what's this change of I was like, why? Why wait till the end of the show to kind of basically do that? I was like, that's an interesting choice. But then you get into the episode, you're like, oh, okay, the moment we got a first musical number, I was like, oh, okay, so it's a musical, which is pretty dope. If you don't know anything about me, I've never been the biggest musical person, but over the past few years, I've definitely grown to like musicals a lot more. I think I'd attribute that mainly to The Magicians. That show, ever since season 2 of that show, they would do basically at least one musical every subsequent season. So I thought that was, I think that really kind of unlocked it. And I love that. Like obviously another show that does a lot of musical episodes would be Riverdale and everything like that. But I thought it was so dope that it's like, of course this show would have it, but I had to remind myself, like, partway through the episode, I was like, all right, like the first season 1 had a musical episode. It was the Danny Street episode. I think that's the only other musical episode, because I was also starting to think about like other DC shows, because I know it's a Flash episode, but it's a Flash and Supergirl crossover that's a musical. I'm trying to remember if Doom Patrol ever had one. I feel like they would, but I don't did I say Doom Patrol? I think I said Doom Patrol. I meant Legends of Tomorrow. I feel like Legends of Tomorrow had one, but I'm not remembering. Because like Legends of Tomorrow, I put it in the same camp as Doom Patrol. These are the two weirdest DC properties, like live action wise. So I feel like I don't remember. Let me know in the comments down below, because I do feel like there had to be one, and I'm just not remembering it off the top of it. It does seem like there was one. I can't really place it. Now, it does feel like I can, because there's been musical elements to it, but it's like, regardless. But also DC/Vertigo wise, there's also Lucifer, which had a musical episode. I want to say it was definitely season 5. I want to say it was episode 10 was the musical episode, if I remember correctly. So, but anyway, it's so dope that this show got to have one, at least in, and this feels like, once again, the perfect, weird, absurd show to have a musical episode. And obviously, I mean, and I think that's the beautiful thing about musicals. Obviously, they play, some more than others, but obviously using the story of the episode to tell its story through, the musicals. I mean, that's the point of a musical, I know, but it's like this show having its heavy themes, and I think that's supposed to be the important contrast. It's like one of those, like, it's kind of like dark pop in the regards of like, like you have this very like heavy, like nice, like uplifting instrumentals, but then you look at the lyrics and they're kind of like sad, and so it's kind of like that. Or is it power pop I'm thinking of? I mean, dark pop, I know dark pop and power pop are a different thing, but I'm trying to like, because I'm going on a tangent. It's unimportant, but it's like, right, these undertones of what each of these characters are going through, and then these happy, uplifting songs, and also the sadness at the end of the songs, because you're like, oh, the messaging behind them and stuff. So just the little musical numbers and cues that it seems like, okay, so Isabel rewrote reality and basically made it an ever-ending holiday celebrating her and all things. We also kind of get a little bit into her origin of like, oh, she fell into the time hole and basically her mind was open. So I wasn't fully clear after last episode. I guess this kind of gave more clarity on, like, once again, she is Immortus. She always kind of was, I guess, because she was kind of inside and outside of space and time. Once again, she was everywhere and nowhere all at the same time. So, but it's just like, yeah, that kind of led to her becoming Immortus and stuff like that. Like I said, I can never fully tell whether it's like she is Immortus and always kind of has been, or was it a situation of she fused with, like, her mind being open, she fused with something out there and became Immortus. Like I said, it still feels like it's a little both, but either way, the fact is that each kind of, like, let's kind of break down everyone's song. Like, honestly, my favorite song is probably VIDS, just sonically and vocally, like, it just resonated the most with me. I just like, oh, it's like, I actually really, really like it. I mean, to be fair, I'd go back and listen to all of this. I'm curious, will you be able to find these songs on, like, Spotify? I mean, let's face it, like, let's be blunt. Someone's most likely ripped all the music from this episode, and you'll probably either find them separately or at the very least a compilation somewhere on the internet. It's going to happen. But either way, Let's kind of break down different ones. Well, first and foremost, let's start off with Cliff's circumstances, his songs in particular. His first one's about masturbating, but that's also in a larger conversation about his circumstances of, it's like, right, in this life, I'm flesh. This is all I've ever wanted to be, was human again. And now I am. And that struggle between, like, I'm going to leave, like, me as both Robot Man and as Cliff, I'm no good for my family. I'm not a good dad, and no matter how much I want to try to be. And he loves Rory, but it's also like, I'm going to screw up with you, even though you're kind of my second chance because of all. I was kind of failed Clara, and I wanted to kind of get a second chance with her, which I kind of have, and I'm also kind of getting a third chance with Rory. But for him, it's like, it's not just the Robot Man. That is one part of it, but it's like, even as a human, like me as Cliff, putting just aside the Robot Man of it all, as Cliff, I'm not a good person, and it's not just my robot body. My family is better off without me. But it's like, at least in this world, he could at least be around and know they're happy and everything. So it is a thing of like, you understand why out of anyone, Cliff is pushing the most for this world in comparison to everyone else. Like, even when everyone, jumping ahead a little bit, is having their doubts about it and everything, he's the one being like, no, they didn't mean that. Like, you're so great, Immortis. He's the one kind of like sucking up to her because he likes this reality, especially when he heard from Clara that she's great, she sounds great. So it's like, why would I want to ruin that? Like, I might be better off, because it's not even like, oh, I want to be here with my family. I want to be in a world where I know they're better off and they're good. And at least, I can, it's like, everyone's kind of like, right, you just want to use this place as an excuse to jack off. That's what it is. But it's like, right, when you're able to feel for the first time in decades. I mean, yes, he's had a little bit of feeling because of the one finger situation. But even then, it's like, for the first time to fully be able to feel like he's enjoying his piss and everything, it's just kind of wild. And then, obviously, like, talking about piss, you take Vic's situation, which I feel so bad for Vic, because he's the only, well, I'd say argue that Cliff got interrupted during his masturbation song, but Vic kept getting interrupted multiple times. First by Rouge being like, Vic, were you singing? He was like, yes. She's like, oh, I mean, that was lovely. She's like, go on, and then, we'll meet up and kind of figure things out, and you just keep going back to what you were doing. And then got interrupted by Cliff pissing, and then Larry being like, yo, Vic, are you okay? He's like, yeah. He's like, okay. And then that was the third strike, you're out. Like, he was like, I was interrupted 3 times. But yeah, for Vic, he's torn between two sides of things as well, because here the world is great and everything, but it's like he's still bound by that cyborg situation, like that conversation Derek had with him at the beginning of last episode of, what do you, like, you can't completely discount Cyborg. You can't go back to being the way Cyborg was and who you were as Cyborg, because that didn't work, but there has to be another way. There has to be a third way forward, because you can't kind of continue as you are now, because you're kind of in this middle lane, but you can't also go back to Cyborg. There has to be a third way, like a better middle ground, a new way forward as Vic, as Cyborg, that he just hasn't found yet. And so coming to terms with that, and just, especially when he was trying to tell Dorothy, like, oh, we should leave this place. But for her, it's like, this place might not be real, but it's kind of all what we wanted. And so Vic is torn between, what does he want? And at the end of the day, he doesn't fully know, because here he gets to just be with his family. Because even Dorothy's like, this is the first time we've all just been together without some like shenanigans or some other BS getting away. It's like, yeah, we have an immortal god like controlling everything and rewriting reality to fit our own needs, but at least we're all together. We're here as a family, especially when some of them have lost so much over their lives and over the course of the show. So I think that's interesting. Obviously, we also have the Casey and Jane of it all, because we saw it last episode, them really kind of connecting over, right? Casey's a fictional character, Jane's in the same spot. Even one point she's drawing the underground, but obviously that's when her memories were still sealed away and she couldn't quite, once again, it was all breaking through the surface, but because Casey kind of connects with Jane, I think, because it seems like it might be the first time Casey's ever kind of fallen for somebody. It's not the same situation with Jane, but I mean, even like her relationship situation with I'm blanking on her name, but the fog lady from last season. It's like, well, that didn't work out. I mean, I think we caught up a little bit with that in the first half of this season, if I remember correctly, but I could be wrong. Like, there might have been like a message between them, but that was about it. Like, Jane's kind of like, yo, I don't have any position to really be in a romantic situation right now, considering like I've got a lot to figure out now that I got my memories back, because it's like, right, my body isn't just me, because in this world, and I think that's such an interesting thing that we've obviously steered so far away, at least I don't think it came up as much during the first half either, of like the different personalities. They've kind of taken a backseat because it is Jane's story, because for so long it was Kay's story, and now it's Jane's journey rather than Kay's journey, and Jane being, you know, not really knowing where her role is in that. Now it's like, what is my role outside of all of that? And it's like, you know, I'm not really in a position to, you know, because my body isn't just me. I do have to take responsibility for the other multitude of personalities, because we are all serving the greater purpose of being there for Kay. So, you know, my body isn't just, this body isn't mine to kind of do whatever I want to with. That was a, you know, a part of that aspect for her journey last season as well, and still coming to terms with and still dealing with that. And Casey, you know, even saying later on, thought she was, oh, I thought I needed my next adventure, but, you know, I'm staying for the wrong reasons, because she stayed because she kind of had nowhere else to go. But now it's like, maybe I should go on my own. And that's where I was bringing up last episode. I'm not sure where the Doom Patrol is going to stand when the series comes to an end. Will some of them stay? Will they all go their separate ways? Like, will this be the end of the Doom Patrol? I mean, especially the direct parallel. I didn't even think about it last episode. Look at where the Titans are. The Titans all went their separate ways, pretty much. At the end of the show, they're always going to be a family, but they always went their separate ways, and there could always be a new Titans, you know, build up with like Dick and Corey, like doing that, but like everyone went their separate ways to do their things, right? So I think we could probably have a similar thing in this. But like I said, it just depends on how they end up approaching it. Yeah, the Larry situation, because for him, it's like, right, I'm not radioactive. A lot of those concerns he has a boyfriend that he wants to introduce to his family, Mr. 104. But it's like, even Mr. 104, it's like, yeah, but this is all we wanted. We wanted to find another way. And it's like, right, here you don't have to worry about being that atomic bomb or whatever. And we can find happiness, and I get to meet your family, and just kind of, he's like, Larry was having reluctancy about, once he found out the truth about everything, he was having reluctancy of like holding on to this world. It was fake. And that ends up being this larger conversation with him and Dorothy, where it's like, well, Larry was kind of convinced by Mr. 104, but he's the one that kind of bails on the whole situation at the end. But Dorothy says something very poignant, where it's like, this place is just another prison. I'm over 100 years old. I've kind of had to live in a prison for so long. Like, I'm tired of being locked away, having someone else kind of dictate a lot about my life. I want to go out there. I want to live. I want to experience the world, because her father hid it away for so long. But now it's like, you know, and she's got to experience a little bit of the world over the course of, like, you know, leaving during season 3, and now, like, you know, her journeys that we've caught a little bit of this season. But Larry just wants happiness, and it also flows into the whole situation with Key. He found a place that I think would also work for Key as well, but also you're happy, and it's just, and that also nicely ties into everything with Rita, where Rouge was like, the moment Rouge was like, oh no, like, Casey, you go with and just let Rita leave, because part of me was thinking like, well, there's also a little selfishness in that, because, well, Rouge explains later on she didn't want to destroy Rita's happy day again, but it's also because in this world, Rita's like, oh, you and me, Rouge, were best friends, but, you know, for Rouge, it's, their complicated history doesn't bind them in this world, because no matter what, that will always be a part of them. And it comes like, they try to take steps in the right direction to kind of put that past behind them and move forward, but it's always going to be there. It's always going to be part of their story. And, you know, Rita's never going to fully forgive her, because there's, I mean, it's stacked on top of like all the stuff that Rita's dealing with on her own, which also like Rouge plays a role in that. But, and it's still unclear why out of anyone, Rouge continues to be the one who breaks the spell. Because I brought it up last episode, she kept being the only one, like, she couldn't fully put her finger on it, but she was like, whoa, did anyone else notice that? She's the only one that, like, can, like, escaped her power a little bit. And she was the first one to wake up. And it's like, why is that, though? because I brought up last episode. I don't know if it's because of the time hole that she created that they did show it again where it's like, right, like Rouge was kind of like slipping into transforming into her, and maybe that played some role where it like kind of creates. I mean, maybe on some psychological level. I mean, Isabel, like in that loneliness and that darkness, that nothingness, and that everything, maybe she attributes Laura Rouge to that trauma. And so even her powers have a blind spot with Laura because Laura is her trauma. Because it's like, oh, if it wasn't for you, you're the reason why I fell into the pit and like fell into nothingness and was alone, begging for death, but death would never come. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe more of a psychological thing of rather there being like oh yeah, because Laura made the pit and you fell down the time hole, like that brought some kind of deeper connection to you. It could just be purely psychological, which I could definitely see that being the case. Now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, I'm like, that would be interesting if that's the explanation for it. Well, whether we'll ever get one, who knows? Like I said, it could just be a natural byproduct of maybe it has something to do with Rouge's abilities. I mean, Jane in the situation she is right now, you would think her personalities would come into play in that, but a lot of, obviously the underground is like a mess. It's kind of empty, and just like Jane and just underground and Kay are just like a mess right now. So maybe if they were around, they could play a role in fixing that, and like, there'd be something there, but I don't know. But yeah, Rouge was the one who ended up awakening everyone, because it turns out the tape that Cliff was going to watch for porn, which I love when she was about to play in front of him. He's like, whoa, and let me explain. She's like, no, Cliff, this isn't, and made the jack off motion. He was like, oh, then go ahead, never mind. But yeah, like the moment they showed that Larry, like the moment the video frame stopped and you see below the static, it's Larry, I was like, oh, these are their videos from Niall's interviews with them. And it's like, that ended up awakening everyone's memory. I was like, how are you going to do that with, I mean, Casey has no direct correlation. Dorothy, it's like, well, her dad and the trauma and the pain there. But like Vic, it's like, he never had those moments with Niles, but all you had to do to trigger it was make him remember, hey, you were Cyborg. And obviously there's a lot of pain and trauma and memories. I mean, his life is, it's one of the biggest defining moments of his life. So obviously, like, everyone else was triggered by the interviews, which also played into these defining moments in their lives. I mean, even Rita's was about, right, her not wanting to be a monster anymore. That was the beauty of this world. And Rouge tried to tell her, hey, you're not a monster. Like, I never thought you were a monster. She's like, yes, because in our friendship, Rouge, you are the monster, which sucks. It's understandable why she will always be the monster, even though, and it's that complicated thing that Rouge has had to deal with, where it's like, it feels like, when I take a step forward, it doesn't matter. Like, our history will always be a thing of, you will always view me as a monster, So, yes, there might be some projection there, but it is also just the reality of, yeah, what Rouge has done and taken from Rita. And she's always tried her best to kind of, like, there's only so much she can do to make up for the past, so. The whole team is divided on whether they want to stay or whether they want to go from this reality. And when the time rolls around, you have Isabel show up, and it's like, okay, so no matter whether we want to stay or go, there's still a God at our doorstep. So everyone put on your happy faces. They end up having dinner with her, and Rouge is the only one that kind of stands up to her. Everyone's got these pleasantries. Well, Larry's like, oh yeah, like me and Mr. 104, and then Isabel was like, and just like, oh, you're amazing too, Isabel. And she's like, Immortis, which is so interesting because all of last episode, she was like, call me Isabel. Now it's like, no, I'm all Immortis. I'm all in on that. So you're going to respect me as the god that I am. But it wasn't just Rouge. Like, Rita kind of was like, yo, you are everything that I was. The fact is, you're more insecure than I am. You are even more narcissistic than me. And even she's like, yeah, that takes a lot for you to be that much more to me. But at the end of the day, Rita, it's like, I don't want to stay in a world kind of where you are basically a pale imitation, like an even more extreme version of me. And it's like, I don't want to be that person. And none of them want to be the people that they're here. And so a lot of the group, kind of decides to go. Casey wants to go kind of be an actual hero out there in the world. Dorothy wants to be free. Vic does. Rita wants to. Mr. 104 does. Larry didn't really say much. Neither did Jane. Obviously, once again, Cliff is the one that's like, yo, I want to stay. But it was just too much for Isabel, and I love that she kind of like pouts and like slides down chair, but then gets up, and then she's just like, you know what? And then she starts singing the Doom song, and like they're all doomed, and I was like, that's a really good like gravitas song of like feels like a very villainous moment. And it's like, what are you going to do? Kill all of us? And she's like, no, I don't have to. It's like, well, what she does is return them back to reality. It's like, well, you'll be your own undoing because all of you, because if you had noticed, like Rita and Jane in particular didn't have white hair anymore. So she was keeping them alive, you know, because I guess like because trapping them in this forever kind of restored, like gave them temporary, like, their longevity again, because she needed them to stay around in this world where they continue to worship her. But now that they're back, they all lost their longevity again. So for her, it's like, oh, I don't have to kill you. I just have to wait for you to die. Which obviously is going to be her big mistake because, you know, every villain makes that mistake of rather than going ahead and killing the hero, you leave them alive so they can always come back and strike you down. I mean, it's also like, obviously that's very true of any superhero team, but it's like the Doom Patrol in particular, we can admit are kind of like the cockroaches of the superhero world. I mean that in the most like fucked up, but also very praising way because they always come back. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see where this all ends up taking us. I also completely forgot to talk about, like, I love the sex ghosts being like the backgrounds of this episode when it comes to the musical moments, especially when Rouge was just kind of like, oh my god, am I singing in my words? And just like little moments when they pop in where it's like, oh, like she's like, fuck, and they're like, I love little moments like that throughout. Yeah, we've only got 3 episodes left. I'm so curious to ultimately see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.